Norwich then through to the quarter-finals. Spurs out of the FA Cup. Four defeats in a row now, overall, for Jose Mourinho's side. This was the one lifeline. Maybe if he delivered some silverware, he would shut the critics up. But again, I feel like we're going down the same path when it comes to Mourinho and Spurs. Not good enough.
He made some changes. So did Norwich, to be fair. Made a couple, at least. They're at home against a team 4 points adrift of everyone in the Premier League. At home. Again. Took a kick up the backside for them to push a little bit towards the end before extra time. But Norwich dominated pretty much most of the normal time.
Yeah.
Again. So there's no other way to paint it. He's at the moment, it is a very negative picture at Tottenham.
And Craig's right in the fact that this wasn't Spurs battering Norwich, and maybe Norwich were lucky to get that late equaliser. They deserve this.
Yeah, this was an evenly played match that you would have thought, okay, well, these are two teams in which they're somewhere there or thereabouts close in the standings of the Premier League. That's not quite the case. When you look at Norwich, to further the point as to who Norwich is a team that has allowed 51 goals in the Premier League. So they aren't exactly a team that defensively does a lot of things well. Just to put it in perspective, 51 goals means that they're the second worst team defensively to Aston Villa in the Premier League. And so, if you're Spurs, this is the game to build confidence on. This is the game in which you knock the ball around. This is the game in which you create chances, you create opportunities, you score goals, you build momentum, and you turn the corner on what has been a negative period up until this point. But now what do you do? Because if you were looking for this to be a positive sign, and certainly it wasn't in the final result, it wasn't in the way that you play, it wasn't in the chances created, it wasn't in the goals scored. And so what do you do? What do you turn to and say, this is what we can hang on because we know that what we're doing works? At this point, you don't know that what you're doing works, and you're looking at the guy sitting over there on the bench, Jose Mourinho. Well, he's the guy that's going to lead us to titles. That's why he's here. And yet he's got a whole lot of questions to answer, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to.
Gab, it was interesting listening to the latest edition of your podcast with Jules. You weren't pulling any punches when it came to Jose Mourinho, in particular the point that he made about July 1st.
Yeah, you can understand where it comes from, but there's certain things that you really shouldn't say. When you come out and you say, July 1st, and what he means by this is, I can't wait for it because then we hit the big reset button and we can bring in new players. And I inherited this team, and these aren't my players, and Eriksen and Vertonghen and Danny Rose and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, what you will achieve on July 1st, or what you can achieve on July 1st in terms of transfer budget, in terms of wages, that's going to be contingent on, or partly contingent on, whether you get in the Champions League this year. And Spurs were very well placed to certainly challenge Chelsea for that fourth spot. I mean, they still are. They're not a million points behind. So to go and kind of give the impression, which that quote does, that he's writing off the rest of the season and then we start from scratch next year, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I have more of an issue with that than I do with going out Norwich against the FA Cup. It is kind of a whatever situation from his perspective. But advancing an extra round in Europe, getting into the Champions League next year, that means more money and more money to spend to rebuild and get the team that you want.
It's a way to go with your new players, isn't it? When you come in after a few weeks and you turn around and very publicly say, I can't wait for this season to be finished.
Yep.
A season that they've still a heck of a lot to play for. Still is. They're not out of the Champions League. It's unlikely the way they're playing, particularly at Leipzig. They're fighting for the top, I can't say top four, Champions League places because we don't know what's going to happen. For a team that had so much still to play for, to have a manager to go in and publicly basically say, I don't think I can get the results needed with this group of players. I think everybody, and probably Daniel Levy himself, was probably, and the board that Spurs were probably hoping maybe he had changed a little bit. He hasn't.
It's another form of deflection. It's another form of Captain Deflecto. It's another form of saying, this doesn't stick on me.
Right.
It has nothing.
It's the players that I inherited.
Yes, it has nothing to do with me. Look, I walked into here and it was a struggling team. What do you want me to do? I can't. Well, the truth is that his responsibility and his resume would suggest that he could come into that same locker room made of players that went all the way to the Champions League final a year ago, and he would make a difference. And people, Spurs fans, would suggest, yes, this changes our profile as a team. This changes who we are, because this guy has a whole different, broader view of how to do it, when to do it, and how to get the results that we need. And yet, what we have found is that there's been a step forward, 2 steps back. A step forward, 2 steps back. And every time there's a step back, it's everybody else except Jose Mourinho who's to blame. And in his mind, he'll come out and continue to have this rhetoric as if to say, nothing to see here, no problem. We're going to deflect it this way, we're going to deflect it that way, and it's never going to reflect on me.
He is without Kane, his best player, without Son as well. That surely makes a difference.
Not against Norwich.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, the last 4 games has been coming for a while. There was a smoke and mirrors game against Man City at home, which they won. Yeah. And really and truly, it's a minor miracle how that ever happened, apart from the fact they went down to 10 men. We're still looking at experienced players here. We're looking at new signings in Bergwijn. We're looking at Champions League experienced players like Lucas Moura. We know Lo Celso has been pretty good for him. I understand he hasn't got a striker, but I don't know. It's a hard one. I so hope that, and it might come, because I don't wish bad on Mourinho or anybody else, because I think he's had a fantastic track record and career, and I'm a part of me wants to see that fire burn again. To see if he can really come back and prove the doubters wrong. But the more I listen to him and the more I see his sides, I kind of think it's getting further and further away.
And in the conversation of the top 5, it's very difficult to put an argument at the moment from what we've seen from Spurs as to why they should be leading the conversation, because Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, of course, has made a difference. Mikel Arteta has made a difference at Arsenal as well. Sheffield United look difficult to beat. Chelsea, of course, are ahead of everyone at the moment. Spurs are very much low down on that list, aren't they? Because what have you seen to inspire you to think, actually, I think Mourinho can really kick them up the backside over the next couple of months to make a run and get in the Champions League?
Well, they've got Burnley coming up. I think it's the next league game. Then they've got Leipzig. And then they've got the aforementioned Man United in the next few games. They've got Sheffield United in the next few games, who, by the way, when they played Spurs at home, completely outplayed them. I don't think he was there at the time, but there's no sense that Tottenham are going to put together a consistent run of performances. And I know we'll get to this, and Ali mentioned deflection tactics. He got the biggest deflecto tonight he ever wanted in the Eric Dyer situation.
Well, the conversation of the top 5, it's very difficult to put an argument at the moment from what we've seen from Spurs as to why they should be leading the conversation, because Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, of course, has made a difference. Mikel Arteta has made a difference at Arsenal as well. Sheffield United look difficult to beat. Chelsea, of course, are ahead of everyone at the moment. Spurs are very much low down on that list, aren't they? Because what have you seen to inspire you to think, actually, I think Mourinho can really kick them up the backside over the next couple of months to make a run and get in the Champions League?
Well, they've got Burnley coming up. I think it's the next league game. Then they've got Leipzig. And then they've got the aforementioned Man United in the next few games. They've got Sheffield United in the next few games, who, by the way, when they played Spurs at home, completely outplayed them. I don't think he was there at the time, but there's no sense that Tottenham are going to put together a consistent run of performances. And I know we'll get to this, and Ali mentioned deflection tactics. He got the biggest deflecto tonight he ever wanted in the Eric Dyer situation.
Well, let's talk about the Eric Dyer situation. Just put it into context with us here in the studio. We were just about to record the show. Footage then emerged, obviously, on social media. And at first, we weren't even sure if it was really Eric Dyer. And then, of course, it became clearer and clearer that it was the England international. So as we go to air now, news is pretty fresh. Facts are still pretty sketchy. But Gav, I understand Jose Mourinho has addressed it.
Yeah, Jose Mourinho addressed it and suggested that a family member, his Eric Dyer's younger brother, was in the stands. There was some kind of altercation, some abuse was directed at his younger brother, and at which point Eric Dyer basically hopped the fence and jumped up and ran up, and ran a long way actually, up into the stands. Stewards certainly intervened. He was taken away. Mourinho said that, this is something that, maybe professional footballers have felt like doing when a family member is abused on their behalf, but it's not something that as a professional you can do. Those are the facts that we've established or that have been pretty much confirmed thus far. The rest, there's a wild swirl of rumors out there, which we don't need to get into.
Yeah, a lot of rumours doing the rounds, and as Gab said, we can only really deal with what Jose Mourinho says about it and what we...
Well, I'll tell you what we do know. I'll tell you what we do know. We do know that supporters are not allowed to enter the field of play or come over the barriers. We also know there is no excuse for a player entering the stands. Can't condone that. I understand family abuse. Supporters get very angry at times. I've seen it. Spoken to my parents and other family after games, and they tell you what's been said about every player. It doesn't give you the right to jump into a crowd and confront the issue. It doesn't. And he is going to be in some severe trouble when all this unravels.
There is absolutely, and I mean absolutely, nothing to gain from Eric Dyer. Even if it was done in the best intentions to defend his brother, there's everything to lose from his perspective. You cannot, must not, will not, simply cannot do it. You cannot go on the stands, because at that point you open up a whole can of worms that you don't want any part of. And this will give people something to talk about other than the facts about what's going on with this team and Spurs, and yet another disappointing performance.